Welcome back to the Fox Studios in Los Angeles, everyone. As we've been telling you all evening, it is our intention tonight to try and test what we are calling perhaps signs of God from the experts. So let's go to the experts. Will Shank is an art conservator whose resume includes work at renowned museums in London, Madrid, and here in the United States. For 2 decades, he's been an expert on how to preserve and protect some of the world's greatest art treasures. It's a job that requires him to intimately understand how these works were made. We now join him in a laboratory at the University of California at Davis. And Mr. Shank, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
My pleasure, Giselle.
Let's talk first about these rose petals. When you first heard about these images appearing on these very delicate petals, what was your first reaction?
Well, I was skeptical, but I'm also a believer in phenomena that can't be explained rationally, and I was hoping that this might be one of those cases. I am, however, an analytical kind of guy.
Okay, being analytical, however, when you first saw them, what first surprised you most?
What surprised me most was that they were not random patterns. It was not the case of maybe it is, maybe it's not, but it was very clearly an image of the Virgin of Guadalupe, for instance, on the rose petal that I examined.
So did you believe then automatically these are the work of man?
Automatically, that's what suggested itself to me, but I wanted to get as much information as I could about how they were made.
Will, you've tried yourself to place images on rose petals. What happened? What were your results?
Yes, I have. I can show you the results.
Yeah, good.
What we're actually looking at here is one of Mila Carrasco's rose petals from Monterey that's shot in strong light coming from behind, so that you see what's most distinctive about the images. There is no paint on it. Nothing's been applied to the rose petal, but the lighter area here of the image of the Virgin is much thinner than the surrounding area of the rose petal that hasn't been affected by the image. So it suggests that something has been pressed into the rose petal to make the white areas thinner.
Okay.
So in order to gain more information, I looked at it in another sort of light. This is a very strong light coming from the side we call a raking light, and here you can see the texture of the rose petal. So again, you see the valleys where the Virgin is and the peaks where the Virgin is not, suggesting again that something has been pressed into the rose petal to make the image of the Virgin thinner.
Mr. Shank, the
Yes.
fingerprint that you show us, could that not be the holding of the petals, or does it necessarily indicate that they were pressed with the finger as opposed to being pressed into a book, a Bible?
I think the fingerprint you're referring to, Giselle, is this series of patterns here, and in fact I think it's extremely unlikely that casual handling could result in that sort of impression.
And Will, your attempt?
My attempt, you see here, this is actually an image that I created on a rose petal, and with the help of colleagues and friends, I experimented with everything that I thought might be available in a modest dwelling in Mexico without any sort of sophisticated technology. I tried heat, I tried acids in the form of lime juice, I tried bases in the form of household bleach in order to create an image using the sort of metal milagros and ex votos and other objects commonly available in Mexico. I got these at my neighborhood botanica, and this image that you're seeing here of the Sacred Heart was actually created by heating an image like this and pressing it into the flesh of a rose petal. I think it's fairly convincing.
Well, a very interesting attempt. Thank you so much, Will Shank, for joining us.
Just
Michael?
before we lose Will, just one
Yes.
quick one, Will. When we turn Mila's petals around and see from the reverse side, they're basically the same image. What happens when we turn yours around and look from the back?
Rose petal.
Unfortunately, we did not hear that last answer. Can you just give it to us real quickly, Mr. Shank?
They're virtually identical front and back, except reversed, because it is all about the transparency of the rose petal.
All right,
You can
thank
see
you.
through it.
Thank you
You're very
so much
welcome.
again, not only for your attempt, but for joining us this evening. Michael, one expert, Will Shank, says, could be man-made. Shows us his rendition. What do you think?
Well, I mean, this is part of the testing process, and you know, I guess it doesn't completely answer it. Why don't we go to, let's get a botanist.
Another expert, you'd like another expert
let's try
perspective,
again.
I agree. We have an expert botanist standing by, also at UC Davis, a PhD in biology. Professor Michael Reed has done extensive research into the molecular analysis of plant life. And with our very special camera, you will be seeing what he has seen when he gives Mila's rose petals thorough microscopic examination. Dr. Reed, thank you so much for joining us as well.
Nice to be with you, Giselle, Mike.
More than anyone else, you know how delicate, how very flimsy and delicate these rose petals are. Were you surprised by these beautiful images that appeared on them?
I was intrigued by the images, Giselle, but I would say that rose petals are not that delicate. We all know about people wearing roses at balls and parties, and rose petals being thrown through the air. In fact, a rose petal is an object that has a surface that's a very flexible skin, like plastic.
So more durable than we would think. You subjected these petals to some pretty thorough analysis, I understand. Can you tell us how you tested them, show us, and then tell us what you were looking for?
Yes, Giselle. Like Will, I thought probably it was possible to reproduce what we saw in Mila's petals by pressing them against a medallion. If you like, I'll show you how I did that.
Please, thank you.
I took a petal and just took a medallion and pressed it against the petal.
Yep.
And then I could look at it in a microscope and see pretty much exactly the same sort of pattern that was seen in Mila's pictures. So here's a virgin and child, for example.
Say again.
And you can see the cleared area where the metal is pressed against the spongy tissue inside the rose petal.
Well, it looks quite similar to the petals that we have from Monterey. Did you detect any processing that could give us some more definitive answers?
Not really, Giselle. The petals are, of course, dried, and one that I received was encapsulated in plastic. But petals that I've made 3 weeks ago and put in my Bible, a botanical book, show images that are quite similar to the ones that we saw in the petals from Mexico.
Dr. Reed, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
You're welcome.
Again, Michael, an expert says perhaps man-made. Any motive in Monterey for making these up?
Well, it's the human nature aspect of it still intrigues me. We now see that man can make them. We don't know if God isn't also making them. If these images are a fraud, you have to ask why these rose petals are not for sale, you know, why they're such precious objects, and why the secret is held. There are a lot of people down there, a lot of them are poor people, they could do with some money. If it's a secret, they're not telling. And
you didn't see them for sale at all?
You can't buy them, and we worked very hard to get to.
All righty. What is the reaction from Monterey to the test of science? Let's rejoin Sandra Cuba live in Mexico. Sandra, you've heard the results. I'm sure you shared them now with Mila. Could they be man-made? Does she believe that?
Mira, la pregunta que te quieren hacer, los expertos dijeron que sí se pueden duplicar calentando una medalla con un pétalo de rosa. ¿Qué usted opina?
Mira, nosotros, o sea, han estado apareciendo de repente así en la Biblia y yo digo que estas son señales, pues, de Dios o de la Virgen.
She truly believes that they're signs from God. She says everyone else has the right to believe what they want, but she knows what happens in her house, and they are a sign from God.
Thank you.
Giselle, Mike?
Thank you so very much, Sandra, and please give our thanks as well to Mila Carrasco.
Will do.
We move now to what is perhaps the most disturbing and compelling of the alleged signs from God, the stigmata. The person who experiences this is believed to be suffering literally the anxiety and the wounds of Christ as he was crucified. Now, Michael, you had heard reports that Katya Revas had experienced and suffered through the stigmata before, and you were determined, were you not, to get this on camera?
Yeah, and in fact, we interviewed a doctor who said that he'd witnessed Katya having what appeared to be a stigmata, and she exhibited the vital signs of a person who was dying. He said that the wounds were real, but incredibly had healed when he examined her the next day. I thought it was essential for this story that we film the experience for ourselves, and our first attempt became, in itself, part of the story.